they actually just have anemones. So at one point, they would have had a small shell, and those shells eventually dissolve. An anemone well, the anemone lives on the shell, and then the shell dissolves, so it's left with just this anemone, and the inside of the anemone will actually become curved to fit around the tail of that hermit crab, which is very almost spiral. So they have a perfect, union in the anemone's base.
Yeah, those things are always fascinating to see, like the decorator crabs that have put different things are wearing different animals in that symbiotic relationship. Well, next question. Donna Lynch asked, do you expect or have you seen any sharks? I guess Alex, being our fisheries biologist, you want to take that one?
Well, chimeras are kind of closely related to sharks.
Exactly.
They're the closest ones, actually. So in a way, we have seen something like a shark. We haven't seen any other types yet, but probably either in the water column, either on our way up or down, we could probably see some. There are some deep sea sharks, but we haven't seen them yet. But it'd be really cool if we could get to see some. That would be really exciting.
Yeah, I haven't seen any deep sea ones, but I think during recovery on dive 2 or dive 3, we saw either a mako or a white tip. I couldn't quite tell exactly. It stayed pretty far away while the RV was being recovered. You could just see it hovering under the surface.
Oh, very
cool. We do see deep sea sharks, not uncommonly. Six gills, Greenland sharks, things like that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll still encounter a few of those on this expedition. Ceravas Wallenrevens? Sorry, Wallevens? Sorry if I mispronounced that. I've just heard that there will be another shipwreck dive on this cruise. When will that be? So we're planning on visiting a wreck on Thursday, so 2 days from now. This wreck is much more of a mystery than the first one. Not that the first one wasn't a mystery. We have no idea what it was or what not. But we were very sure, due to some high-resolution mapping surveys, that it was going to be, in fact, a shipwreck. Our dive target for Thursday is a much bigger question mark. It's based on some very coarse-grained side-scan sonar, so we can basically see a lump that is an odd shape for the deep sea and what looks like a debris field around it. But what that's going to turn into be is really anyone's guess.
Sorry, there's a really famous example from, I think it was the 2014 expedition on this ship in the Gulf of Mexico, where they were intending to explore this shipwreck feature, again, similar to the one we have coming up. It was just a little blip on the sea floor, and they assembled an entire team of archaeologists ashore to tune in and be able to comment on what we were seeing. And when we actually got down there, it was in fact something that has never been seen before of that scale, but it was a tar lily. And so that's basically when asphalt is extruded from the seafloor, and it had split into about, I think, like 10 different petals, essentially. And it looked like this giant flower of tar on the seafloor. And, that was the beauty of telepresence, being able to work with teams ashore of different expertise, because we were able to say, okay, archaeologists, we don't actually need you today. We do need a bunch of geologists. And they were able to move in really quickly and give us that expert knowledge.
All right, on to the next question. Zachary Andrew Jones asked, what is the strangest invertebrate you guys have seen since diving? This is always a hard question.
That's such a hard question.
It really is. Alex, you're kind of new to the deep sea. What stood out to you?
Everything. No. Honestly, well, I think the hermit crab with the anemone has been the coolest possible thing I've seen so far. But we saw a lobate comb jelly that was green, which I've never seen a comb jelly that's colorful before. That's pretty cool. I don't know. There's so many things to pick. When I've learned so much about corals here, I never knew anything about corals, and now I'm learning a lot about corals, and I've become like, oh, that's actually really cool. I never knew that. So hard to pick.
What about you, Diva?
It may have to be the tube worms that we're seeing today. The lamellobrachia tube worms, they're found only in cold seep and hydrothermal vent habitats usually, and they actually don't have a mouth or a gut. They instead have an organ in their body known as a trophosome, and that is packed full of bacteria, and those bacteria use chemicals to create food for that animal. So just a really weird worm that can get to, nearly 2 meters in length in some places.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat and actually go to a previous cruise.
That's not fair.
Yeah, that's what I get to go for last. So one of the coolest things I remember ever seeing was, I believe it was actually in the Gulf of Mexico in 2014, we came across a ctenophore, a comb jelly, that had recently eaten another ctenophore. And so you could see the entire ctenophore swimming along, all closed up, mouth closed, but there was another smaller ctenophore swimming around inside of the larger ctenophore. So that was one of the coolest invertebrate things I've ever seen.
Well, we're going to cheat. I just saw a video that Roland, our video engineer, just showed me the other day about a previous Okeanos expedition of a shrimp eating a squid, which I when you first said that, I'm like, nah, you're kidding. You know, it's like, it's pretty amazing. It's actually real.
That it is. All right, so next question. Victoria Gill asked, what is the difference between a Portuguese man-of-war and a true jellyfish? So
this
back to your
like
invert zoology.
invertebrate biology right here. Oh, no. So a Portuguese man-of-war is known as a siphonophore. It's a type of animal called a siphonophore, whereas jellies is a kind of broad, informal term that is used to describe a whole bunch of different gelatinous animals that float through the water column. So in terms of this conversation, Portuguese man-of-wars are actually colonial. They are made up of many different organisms that called zooids that all work together to basically, like almost in a community-based type of organization. You know, they all work together. They all have different functions, and they work together for this big organism to benefit from, and that's how they survive. Whereas jellies tend to be, that is just one animal made up of different cells. So it's this weird biological difference in terms of like functional anatomy, I guess.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So the next question we have from Alex Marshall is, can you see previous whole feeds of the dives? There's a couple different ways to access them. The simplest is probably through a program called SeaTube. It's hosted by Ocean Networks Canada. If you just Google SeaTube and ONC, you'll find it. There's whole dives from our expeditions. There's whole dives from other expeditions they've run. It's a great resource for rewatching entire dives. You can also go to what is known as the OER, Ocean Exploration and Research Video Portal, and download and access all of our archive video data sets for the entire history of the ship. Through there, both in what's easily streamable, what we call a proxy resolution, and in full high-definition glory that you'll probably need to send us a hard drive to get all 20 terabytes per cruise of video for.
But it is addictive, so be warned.
Yes, yes it is. All right, Teresa Burton. I've always understood brine lakes to be cold water phenomenon. Can you explain brine rivers and lakes and why we see them in the Gulf?
Okay, so in the Gulf of Mexico, going historically back, in the Jurassic period, this actually used to be a contained ocean that then dried up. And so when it dried up, it left a whole bunch of salt, like kilometers worth of salt layers in the Gulf of Mexico. And then that eventually was flooded again and sedimented over. So these, again, kilometer layers of sediment then compressed that salt down and deformed it and made it change shape. And then it was sort of extruded in different places. And as a result, that saltiness leaking out forms these hypersaline, extremely saline bits of areas of water, of hypersaline brine that seeps out of the seafloor. And because it's so salty, it's extremely dense, and so it sinks down to the bottom. And there it is actually difficult. It's so dense that it, you know, if the ROV were to rest down on it, it wouldn't sink. It would float on that brine. And they, as you say, they are found only in the deep sea, I'm pretty sure. And apart from if you can include the Dead Sea. But that's not, I guess that's a different geological thing going on there. But they do tend to be found in the deep ocean, and of course we do need to have certain pressure and temperature variables or characteristics in play to make that a possibility.
Great, thanks a lot, Diva. Next question for Mariana. Have you seen any impacts on climate change? Well, really thinking about the deep sea, so little is understood about it, it's even hard to gauge change. We don't have a baseline. So that's a major part of what this vessel's mission is to go out and collect that initial baseline, do an initial characterization of the area, just so we know what is standard. And regrettably, we're kind of behind the curve with ideas of climate change and human impacts in the deep sea, is we don't have a baseline of what's pristine or what hasn't been done. So we're kind of playing catch up now and trying to get a better idea of what is normal so we can gauge changes. Diva, Alex, do you guys have other things you want to add?
I was just thinking what we see all the time. At first I thought, oh, deep sea is escaped from climate change. It's too far down, too far away. But then we see human debris down here, so maybe it's not out of reach of climate change impacts. So
it definitely is not, and I think both of those answers were perfect. The deep sea is not a pristine place. We are already having huge impacts in this place, which we know so little about.
Great. All right, our next question is the wreck from Saturday. It looked like a merchant ship, was it? Well, that's a hard one.
They paid attention.
They did, obviously. Well, none of us are archaeologists. We are all biologists. But the archaeologists were definitely speculating that was a distinct possibility. It was definitely not built for speed, and it was well built. So They're hypothesizing that